I'm tired, boss. Okay, let's try this again. So I should have made this video like a year ago by this point in time, as the information was still fresh back then and I was still very much into researching and modding this game. As to fast forward to today, where I haven't really played it all that much in about 6 months at this point in time. However, I decided that I just want to commit the little bit of knowledge that I have to video form, so that it does add to the collective knowledge pool, which for this game is becoming less every day, it would seem. Alright, so with that out of the way, basically breakdown of these 4 videos are as following. This will just be an introduction, a quick overview, and we'll look at some history and what you are able to do, what you are not able to do. And then the second video will cover the built-in tools that comes with Mia's Front and Tank Warfare. The third video will cover the tools that were shipped with Operation Star. And then the fourth video is just kind of more of a value add, if you will, in terms of how to make the game look better and run better potentially. I'll give my system specs and then some of the tools that I use, and yeah, hopefully that will be of help to someone out there. So if you are not interested in this first part, I suggest now is the time to skip to either the second or the third video, depending on, well, maybe the fourth video, depending on what information you would like to gain out of this. Alright, so right out the gate, I just want to set the expectations for modding this game. It's very prohibitive. There is not a lot you can still do, especially on the latest version of the engine. You are pretty much left to changing textures and sounds at this point in time. Anything more than that, I'm sure it is possible, but you will probably spend an inordinate amount of time to figure out anything, and like I said, that is if it's possible to mod. So yes, just temper expectations. Like I said, there's not a lot that you can do. You can also modify some in-game variables. So for example, in the third video, when we're using Operation Star's tools, I'll show how to access the config files for vehicles, so that way you can see. I use it specifically to figure out exactly what vehicle uses which sounds, but there are some things that you can adjust, like the fire rate, the horsepower of the engines. Yeah, but honestly, if you're looking for a place to add new models and new effects and just have a lot of fun with it, this is not it. Unfortunately, it's yeah, there's not a lot that you can do with it. And as I mentioned, the information on a lot of it has also been lost over time. You're pretty much stuck with the badly constructed modding manual that comes with Operation Star and tidbits of information that you can find over the internet. Maybe there's still some left in Discord and Steam, but I don't know if I mentioned this, but the original forums are closed down, so a lot of that information is just lost at this point in time. Not to mention that I don't think there's a lot of people still around that actually mod this game. Even if you look at the sound mods, there are pretty much rookie sound mod, which a lot of people used, and then I think Warsimmer made a sound mod at some point in time as well. And then as for even just playing the game, there's pretty much some older tutorials from Warsimmer, and then also ToneC87 makes good videos that explains a lot as he plays along. So not only at this point in time it's difficult just to get information on playing the game itself, the modding information is all but lost. As for the information that is still floating about, your best bet is probably, as I mentioned, Steam, and then there's an unofficial Discord server with a couple of active community members, but even the Reddit, last time I checked, the previous post was like 6 months ago, so yeah. So I quickly want to cover just a little bit of a quick overview of the company itself and the developers. You can find most of the information when you come to their website, just graviteam.com, and you'll see that they've been around in one way or another since at least 2004. Now, all of these games that they have published, some of them were published under a different publisher, but they've been the developers all along. But all of these games run on the same Graviteam engine in one form or another. They specifically designed their own engine, which is a fantastic engine. It's very good for what it does and how many units it can support and all of that. But yeah, as I said, they have been around for a very long time, and I'm not sure exactly how things were a long time ago when like Steel Fury was released, but you'll see that after Steel Fury, a lot of or large modding communities sprung up, and they were very active on Graviteam's forums. However, these forums have been closed since then. They were pretty much, there's nothing really going on anymore. There was just a lot of spam, and then yeah, I think they just basically shut it down so that, as you can see, it says here forum disabled, as I don't think anybody was moderating anymore. So for the team as well, I don't really know how large the team still is, but at this point in time, the only replies you'll really get in Steam is from Goblin and then from Andre. And that being said, Andre is also a scientist at a university in Ukraine, and last year I still checked, he was still publishing papers, so I don't think that Graviteam will receive massive updates in the near future, as I do not think this is the mainstay of the studio anymore. And not to mention, obviously, of course, people in Kharkov have a little bit more to worry about than developing a game at this point in time. Obviously I can't really speak on all of this, as this is just speculation on my side, but you'll see that, I mean, the last game that was published was Tank Warfare, and Mir's Front just before that, and that was 2016 and 2017, even though Mir's Front still received a lot of DLCs and updates up until last year, so it's not that they're not touching it all, but even the speed at which the DLCs are being released seemed like it has slowed down quite a bit. But anyways, as I said, I can't really speak any more on that, as everything from here, if I say anything more on that, it'll just be pure speculation. Then the other part I want to look at is the modding community and its life and effective death. Effectively, when Steel Fury came out, they seem to have drawn in a lot of people that grouped together and did a lot of stuff. I think a large part of that community only, if I remember correctly, like came together a little bit later, as all the tools weren't originally released with the game, but eventually all the modding tools were released for the game, so you could find any of the files in the archives, you could create new missions, as that game only had missions, didn't have campaigns. You could modify the maps, you could modify the models, you could add models, and you could create maps from scratch and then put a mission on them. So there was a lot more, even though the tools weren't very user-friendly, the tools were there, and so was the community. But that eventually all like simmered down to, there's only 2 forums really left, or mods really left for that game that's still up and running or still receiving attention and updates. As far as I know, there might be some others, but these are the main ones. It's can't remember what it's called now, or yeah, but it was called STA, and then from version 2.2, I think, the Japanese community mod split off from them. So the JCM one was still updated in August 2024. I'm not sure about STA. It's at a much newer version, this one now, but it's also a lot more difficult to find and get proper information on unless you're part of their exclusive forum somewhere. Where the Japanese community mod is quite accessible to anybody. You can just log onto their site, and not only do they have the mods and how to set it up, but they also have a lot of information on how to modify Steel Fury. But as I mentioned, you can see there's still updates here, like once a month it would seem at least, but it's also pretty much quieted down. So that also means that it's not only difficult now to find the information on modding, but also finding the people that mod these games are very hard to find. Which then brings us to the later games. Steel Armor Blaze of War and Operation Star were effectively released simultaneously, and one was the tank simulator, and then Operation Star was the tactical war game that came from it. And Operation Star still released with some tools to modify some of the game files. So there were still a couple of things that you could do with Operation Star. I think you could still upload your own model. Not sure, I don't think you could create maps, but you could at least create your own operations. And yeah, you could also obviously do the textures and the sounds and stuff like that. However, it's quite complicated to use those tools. That's why I am dedicating an entire video just to those tools, just to give a quick run through. I'm not even going to go through all of them, as I feel like I'm only going to touch on the ones that you can still use for Mia's Front and tank warfare, as unless you want to specifically play Operation Star, you can't really use all of that stuff, as there has been some changes to the engine and not all of those things are transferable anymore. And then, but like I said, first off, I want to deal with Mia's Front and tank warfare, as their tools are the easiest to use, and it's effectively an evolution of the tools that came with Operation Star. It's just built into the game itself, so you don't have to extract things and recompile things and have them in the correct file or folder structure and all of that. It just basically made it much easier to mod those things. However, it's also much more limited, as the sounds that you can add are only, I'll show you in that video, it's just a specific list of sounds. Same with the textures, but with the sounds specifically, there are other sounds that are not included in that. So that's stuff like certain ambient sounds or speech. You can't modify that with the built-in. However, as they are the easiest to use, we'll start there in the next video, and then in the third video we'll fire up Operation Star and have a play around with those tools and go through them. So yeah, see you in the next one. Just one last thing I wanted to add. I think this is also why the modding community became smaller and smaller, as the communication from the devs got a little bit less and less, but also the tools weren't as powerful as they were from the previous game. So with each iteration of the engine, you could add less and less to the game itself, and I think this is just what made a lot of people just stop being interested in modding Graviteams at all, myself included. As I mentioned, you just don't have the utility that you have in other games that are built to be modified much better, especially if you look at a game like Armor, where there's just so many things that you can change in game, where this game, yeah, it's very, very limited what you can do. So yeah.